Maybe I break so I can bend. Maybe the cracks let the light in. I'm not always strong, but I am real. And that's the kind of power I feel. Some days I feel like I can't fly. The other days I feel so flat. So alive and shattered. Today's the day I shine. So I dream someone who'd fly. For a moment I could touch the sky. Lifted from these feelings I could fly. When forget comes around to drag me down, I reach for my pencil and turn it around. Living homeless in a place where I share all the space. I'm grateful for what I've got, but it challenges me a lot. Like finding a place to meet clients so I can get off the street. I've got no money in the bank, can't even put gas in the tank. Walking everywhere in the heat leaves me sweaty, not sweet. I'm striving to do better, it's true, but I don't always know what to do. I've got all this value inside me, but it's not always so easy to help other people see I'm a walking golden opportunity. Today's a new opportunity to change our current society. The help you get today can get things on their way. I don't want a handout, that's not what I'm about. I just need a hand up, a little love to fill my cup. I'm a writer, an artist, and a designer, copywriter, marketer, trainer, and planner. My list of skills runs miles long. You're wondering where I went wrong. I'm in a love-hate relationship with society. I love people, but I don't find it funny the way we value each other by our money. I wish more people could see and agree. Today's a new opportunity to change our current society. The help you get today can get things on their way. I'm not blaming anyone for my choices. Blaming anyone is pointless. I rejected the corporate plantations here, choosing my child's life over my career. I made my fair share of mistakes. I'm no saint, for heaven's sake. I admit I missed a lot of opportunities due to my fears and insecurities. But my current financial condition is at least in part due to my mission to put people over profits in life. Accepting that this will cause me strife. Today's a new opportunity to change our current society. The help you get today can get things on their way. I've spent decades searching for truth, breaking free of lies I believed in my youth. I'm no longer eager to participate in a system designed to discriminate. I guess what I'm trying to...
All right, we got that going on. Thank you guys for joining me. It is time for Real Talk. And yes, I just cut that song off, so that's Real Talk too. If you can see behind me, you will notice that, maybe, that the room is a little less of a mess. It's a little emptier than it has been in the past. That's right, the move is well underway. We have gotten a lot of the living room cleaned out, and a lot of the stuff in storage, and I guess I need to adjust my camera because the short's not picking me up too well. So let me take a look at that and try to, I'm actually trying out the dual streaming feature, so there we go. Try to make it better experience for everyone, hopefully. I don't know if I'm succeeding in that or not. No? I did succeed in getting myself off camera. So let's see if that works better. So hard to tell where it's gonna land. That's probably better. We hope. I don't know. We'll find out. No. No. Just say no. Sliding around the camera. Tech. Hmm? What? Yeah. So, anyway, so I'm working on it. There we go. I think that's better. Looks like it. So, we were going to talk about power tonight. And I'm going to start off by reading a book called The Price We Pay by Nikki T. Anthony. I'm going to read a chapter out of it for you because it really kind of got me thinking about power. And this is actually from chapter 1. I'm a big reader, so a lot of things that I read, I don't always read things I like. Sometimes I read things to be challenged and to see the world from a different perspective. And that's the case with this. This is not particularly pleasure reading for me. It is challenge me by showing me a different perspective or showing me the world from somebody else's perspective. Zanetta, get your behind up and go to Harlan's and give me a bottle of alligator cane syrup, Daddy ordered from the kitchen. Daddy had been a police officer with the BPD for the past 3 years. He wasn't just any cop either. He was the only black cop on the entire force. Unlike Mama, Daddy was born in Buzzardville and had herds of family throughout Alabama. From Huntsville to Mayapple, Daddy had enough family to give away. In fact, Daddy had family that he never saw. Not because they hated Mama like Mama's Aunt Virgie hated Daddy, but because he was adamant that his family was a thing of the past. Every time Mama suggested he reach out to them and keep in touch, he'd say, "Why stumble over something that's behind you?" His words were so clear that Mama eventually stopped suggesting it altogether. I often wondered if Daddy was distant from his family because he was ashamed of them in some way. But then one day I found out that wasn't the case at all. It wasn't that Daddy was ashamed of his family. His family was ashamed of him because of the choices he'd made. I often felt his ego played a big part in it, too. His pride often cost him everything. In the end, it left him with little to no family, a lack of empathy, and not much to be proud of. In fact, Daddy hardly ever admitted to being proud of anything or anyone. But if I wasn't sure of anything else, I was sure that he took pride in being the only one of his kind on the BPD. I wanted to be proud of him, but I couldn't help but question if Daddy was just too foolish to believe that nothing would change, or too stubborn to admit that he was a part of the problem. He contributed to the destruction of a place that he, and many others, chose to call home. He lacked the ability to understand others, which was why I wasn't surprised he was so hell-bent on sending me to Harlem's. Why do I have to go to Harlan's? Why can't I go get it from One Stop? I shouted back. One Stop is too far. Now get your tail up and go and do what I said before your mama gets home and ain't no syrup to go with her croquettes. I didn't care how far away One Stop was. If it meant I didn't have to go to Harlan's, I'd walk as fast as my feet would carry me just to get there. One Stop would be congested with a traffic jam of shoppers sporting their finest threads, even on a weekday. I could see why, too. The atmosphere of the grocery store was welcoming and made you want to be there, even if you had little to no money to spare. The bright lights were just as inviting as the aroma of the chocolate chip cookies they baked fresh daily. On occasion, they passed them out as samples as a way to entice shoppers to take a fresh batch home. It helped that Mama loved One Stop just as much as I did. Whenever we visited together, our first stop would always be the produce section. She may have looked at that section as a batch of good produce worth buying, but I looked at it as eye candy. The varying colors of apples, oranges, mangoes, and bananas left me feeling as fuzzy as a George peach on the inside. It was hard not to help myself to a bite, but even I knew better than to pull a stunt like that. Mama would be stewing like a pot of hot soup if I would ever embarrass her in such a sophisticated environment. I would never do anything that would have her banish me from showing my face at One Stop ever again. Now, Harlan's, on the other hand, was an entirely different story. I hated going to Harlan's more than I hated eating black-eyed peas on New Year's Day. It was a small, run-down convenience store owned by a Korean family that sat on the corner of Central Street. It always smelled like dead meat, and everything was overpriced and poorly managed. The produce section carried a variety of wilted heads of lettuce, browning celery stalks, and bruised fruit. They overcharged the folk in our neighborhood and didn't deliver on what they were charging us for. Those weren't the only reasons, though, that I didn't want to go there. I hated visiting Harlan's because they made it clear to us black people that they didn't care for us much. They watched us like a hawk whenever we entered their store. Yet they were the ones setting up shop in our area because the real estate in black neighborhoods was dirt cheap compared to places like Woodland Hills. Woodland Hills was the next town over that was not only home to my favorite grocery store, but it was also home to mostly Caucasians. Harlan's definitely couldn't compare to One Stop, but it didn't help that Daddy made senseless excuses for Harlan's like, have you ever considered they just as scared of you as you are of them? Or, you wouldn't know they was looking at you crazy if you wasn't looking at them to begin with. He called it reasoning with the circumstances, but I called it not reasoning with the side that's right. As much as I hated visiting Harlan's, though, I hated being punished by Daddy even more, so I did what I was told. I grabbed my windbreaker and zipped it up halfway. The second I opened the front door, the wind chilled my skin. I shuddered from the sudden drift of cold air. What started out as a muggy day had turned into a chilly evening. The wind whistled against the trees that lined our small street as light rain showers began. Dusk settled in around our neighborhood as I scurried down the street in a hurry to make it back before the rain got any heavier. Even though I was in a hurry, the growling in my stomach couldn't ignore the assortment of aromas filling the air. The aroma of Daddy's biscuits mixed with the smell of fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, candied yams, and pecan pie invaded my nostrils. It was definitely dinner time on Central Street. Cars moved up and down our street while the bus broke down at its stop. I looked both ways, then I darted across the intersection before the light could change green. As I approached Harlan's, I coached myself repeatedly. No lingering, just grab what you need and get out of this place. Hey, Amulis! How are you? Good to see you this evening. I am reading a chapter from a book called The Price We Pay, and then we're going to get into how this relates to discussions about power. It'll come soon, trust me. Let's see. I took one last deep breath, opened the door, and walked in against my will. Raced toward the sugar cane syrup, give the clerk exact change, and leave no matter what happens, I continued. As usual, the store reeked of rotted vegetables and raw meat. Two neighborhood kids stood with the freezer door open, arguing about splitting an orange juice instead of a soda. I recognized one of the kids immediately. She went by the name of Juju and was the daughter of Grover, a known regular who frequented an illegal prostitution house called the Brown Sugar Inn. When I raced past the two of them, their disagreement came to a temporary stop as they looked in my direction. I nodded their way, then made a dash for the aisle that housed the syrup, and they got back to their argument. I found the thick cane syrup that Mama liked and made my way toward the register. Against my better judgment, I detoured and made a stop at the potato chip rack. I was glad I did, however, given the commotion coming from the front of the store. I am glad to see you catching up with me. The clerk stood behind the counter and eyeballed Juju and her friend as they continued to argue. This time they were debating about who would pay the bill. Apparently, Juju paid the last 2 times. Just when I thought it was safe to approach the counter, the clerk shouted, "Hurry up and make a decision, or get your thieving behinds out." "Who you calling a thief?" Juju balked. I could tell by the way her brows bored into her forehead that she was as angry as a swarm of hornets. At the thought of being called a thief, her face contorted, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes sparkled with ferocity. Those same eyes stared at the clerk, unblinking, as if they were being used as a weapon. That smoldering look frightened the life out of me to the point that I couldn't move. "I don't want any trouble. Make a decision and leave my store," the clerk pleaded as terror overtook her face. "You think you can come into our neighborhood and treat us like we animals? You'll be lucky if I don't bust your head to the white meat before I leave this store, Juju threatened. It happened so fast. As Juju reached into her jacket pocket to hand the clerk a bill, the clerk reached for her shotgun behind the counter and fired 2 shots into Juju's forehead. Suddenly, everything went completely silent. Everything around me moved in slow motion as I stood there, gaping in horror. Juju fell to the ground as blood began to seep from the holes in her forehead. Juju's friend was screaming and splattered with blood. I dropped the glass bottle of cane syrup. Through popped ears and blurred eyes, I hauled ass toward the front door. Dust particles floated by, and the smell of gunfire residue filled my nostrils. As I made my way out the door and through the crowd of onlookers running toward the commotion, my knees buckled with every stride. The steady thump of my heavy footsteps echoed in my ears as beads of sweat rolled down my face. Despite my heart feeling as if it would burst within the walls of my chest, I kept running, refusing to stop until I got home, and even then my pace couldn't be slowed. I ran through the front door, past the kitchen, and tried running straight to my room before Daddy stopped me by grabbing my arm. "Girl, are you crazy running through this house like a bat out of hell? What's wrong with you?" he demanded. I could see the panic on his face at what might be going on. She shot her! She shot her for no reason!" my voice cracked. Salty tears fell from the bottom of my chin onto my windbreaker. Oddly, I didn't want the tears to stop. I figured if I allowed the tears to keep raining down on me, that they would wash away any blood that might have splattered my way. "Slow down, girl," Mama rushed from the kitchen with the same look of panic. I was glad to see Mama had made it home just in time for dinner, but talking to Mama was the last thing I wanted to do. "Who shot who?" Mama's eyes were so wide it looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Say something, girl!" Daddy grabbed my arm again. I snatched away. "The clerk at Harlan's! She shot Juju for no reason!" "Lord have mercy! Herschel, maybe you should go and see what's going on," Mama said to Daddy while looking at me. Daddy rushed out the front door. I ran to my bedroom. I jumped in my bed, curled up into a ball, and squeezed my eyes closed. No matter how hard I tried to shut out the image of Juju hitting the ground, I just couldn't shake it. I removed myself from my bed, walked back into the living room, and peered out the front window for what seemed like hours. Police cars were parked at all different angles along the street, while neighbors peeked through their windows. Many even flooded out onto their front stoops to watch the commotion. Mama plopped down on the couch next to me and caressed the small of my back as I gazed out. She didn't say much, neither did I. "Hey, Malachi, good to see you." Yeah, it's not Star Wars for sure. Although it does have a strong, solid opening like that. Glad you're dropping in, Malachi. We're getting through this first chapter, and then we're going to talk about it. She didn't say much, and neither did I. I guess there wasn't much to say. That was until I was forced to go down to the police station to tell my version of what happened at Harlan's. A sergeant I wasn't as familiar with as some of Daddy's other co-workers showed up at our front door and all but forced me to leave the comfort of my home, only to make me relive what felt like the most traumatizing moment of my life. "I would appreciate it if Officer Henchman could speak with her further about this," Mama wanted Daddy to take a written statement from me himself once he returned home. "I'm afraid that's not the proper protocol in this situation," the officer explained. "In fact, it could even be a conflict of interest, considering the circumstances." He spoke calmly, but I was as nervous as a fly in a glue pot. "Don't worry, baby, I'll be there with you every step of the way," Mama's voice was comforting. It gave me the strength I needed to get through the ordeal. What I predicted to be a traumatic experience turned out to be not as bad as I thought it would be. The interview down at the station was pretty straightforward. The police asked the questions, and I answered them without hesitation. What I really wanted to say was, "She shot Juju, grab the handcuffs, open the jail cell, close the cell door, and throw away the key. End of story." But we all knew that wasn't the way things would play out, because unlike people who looked like me, that Korean store clerk had the complexion for the protection. In fact, I wouldn't have been surprised if the clerk didn't serve 1 day of jail time for what she did to Juju. The officer taking the statement hardly looked interested in what I had to say anyhow. It looked like his thick eyebrows lifted high above his beady eyes every time I answered a question. It was almost like he questioned the validity of every word I spoke, but because it was his job to take my statement, he was forced to listen. After an hour of answering the same questions in different ways, Mama suggested I give them all the information I knew and asked that I be excused from any further questioning. If Mama could see that recalling such a horrible experience was becoming distressing for me, then so could the sergeant. He just didn't care. Needless to say, dinner was served late that evening. A little after 8, Mama and I got home. Not too long after we made it in, Daddy's squad car pulled up to the curb. Mama had gone on to finish our meal, but I couldn't take myself away from the window. I was in a trance that I didn't want to be snapped out of. Daddy walked in and Mama greeted him with sorrow in her eyes. "Zanetta, I'm sorry that you had to witness that girl being killed this evening." Daddy took a seat next to me, caressing the crown of my head. "I just don't understand why she had to kill her, Daddy." I could feel the tears building. "I don't know, baby. But what I do know is that you didn't deserve to see it happen." He kept running his hand over my head as if the hairs were out of place. "I just can't unsee it, Daddy," I said softly. "Come on, Ladybug. It's time for dinner," Daddy reminded me after a moment. "I'm not hungry." I didn't move from my place on the couch. My eyes remained glued on what was happening outside the window. "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said it's time for dinner," Daddy grunted, changing his tone from comforting to commanding. "Give the girl a break, Herschel." Recognition dawned on Mama's face. She pursed her lips and gave Daddy an ice-cold look as she tapped her fingernails on the tabletop, sounding off a tisk with every patter. "Don't you tell me what to do with my own child, woman," Daddy fumed. "The girl just witnessed somebody being murdered right before her eyes," Mama reminded him. "Don't you think that's enough to cut the girl some slack for a change?" I was trying to comfort her, but some nigger getting killed ain't no reason for the girl to not join us for dinner. Hearing Daddy refer to his own people in such a derogatory way nearly scorched my ears. "Stop that talk right now, Herschel Hinchman. I mean it." Mama stared at Daddy sadly, the way she always did whenever she couldn't get through to him or get him to see things her way. Daddy was stubborn, but Mama was persistent. No matter what, she was going to get her point across. "I'm the man of this house, and I'll say what I want," Daddy spat. "I'm the woman of this house, and I won't have it." Mama raised her eyebrow and placed her hands on her hips. I wasn't an adult, but I knew what that look meant. During one of their previous arguments, she gave him that same look. While I rushed up for bed one evening, I could overhear him being upset about the fact that she threatened him with withholding sex whenever she wanted to stand her ground. Apparently that look meant if he kept up with his misbehaving, he would be missing out on a good time with her later. I may have been young, but I was far from being stupid. Daddy's face softened as he started to look defeated. I knew my daddy, and I could see that his heart wanted to fight until he won the battle, but his groin had other plans. I removed myself from the sofa, headed toward the kitchen, and plopped down in my designated seat. Mama took her seat next to me, leaving Daddy standing there. "Are you going to take your seat?" Mama asked, giving him that look once more. "Your dinner's getting cold." Daddy took his seat, but I could tell he definitely wasn't happy about it. Mama turned to me with a look of sympathy, a look that put my heart at ease. It told me she had my back and everything would be all right. "Are you okay, baby?" "I would have been if he'd have allowed me to go to One Stop instead of Harlan's like I asked." I nodded in the direction of Daddy as anger hardened my heart. Had he listened to me, I would have never witnessed Juju being slaughtered like cattle. Daddy's persistence for me to go to Harlan's was unnerving. My world had been shattered, and he couldn't care less if it ever turned to normal again. "That's it, Odessa! I am sick and tired of this girl thinking she can sass me." Daddy smashed his fist onto the kitchen table like a judge banging a gavel. He was on the verge of exploding with rage, but just like he didn't care about how I felt, I didn't care about his feelings either. "Just calm down, Herschel." Mama tried her best to referee. Hey, Timothy. Good to see you." All right. So this is, like I said, I will interrupt briefly for a moment. This is chapter 1 from The Price We Pay by Nikki T. Anthony. And it is the impetus for my decision to discuss power dynamics tonight. And I'm going to read through and finish this first chapter. And then we'll talk about power and who has it and whether you have it. And if you don't have it, how you get it. All right. So let's see. "Just calm down, Herschel." Mama tried her best to referee. "Calm down, Herschel, my behind." Daddy's eyes glinted as he sized me up. but I wasn't intimidated by him one bit. Now, I hate that she had to witness something like that, but I'll be darned if I'll allow her to disrespect me. I understand you're upset, but nobody likes to go to Harlan's. Mama extended her arms, as if putting space between me and Daddy while she argued for him to see her point of view. The produce is always old, and they treat us like trash. I don't see why we can't just avoid this mess and shop at one stop to begin with. I refuse to spend extra money on groceries just because you two are uncomfortable with going into Harlan's. Daddy laid down the law as usual. I can't even get a decent head of cabbage in that place, Mama snorted. Those racist Koreans stare at you like they've never seen a black person before, or assuming that you're coming to steal from them. That ain't no way to live. Besides that, we shouldn't have to travel across town to get what should be available right here in our own neighborhood. Mama's voice began to soften, and so did Daddy's facial expression. White folks don't have to travel far to get what they need, and neither should we, Herschel. It just ain't right, baby. Daddy feasted on his croquettes without even acknowledging what Mama said. Before these Koreans invaded our neighborhood with this trash, I was confident about what I was putting into my stomach. Mama's face went blank. Everything was affordable, but most of all, edible. It's getting worse around here. It's not the place I recognized once before. Not only do we have to worry about being sold bad food, but now our children can't even walk into the store without the fear of being shot dead by one of them. Mama's voice sounded fragile and wounded. We ate in silence for what felt like forever until Daddy broke it. First, I want to apologize, Ladybug, for not being a little more understanding. Daddy wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin before he continued. If I hadn't sent you to Harlan's against your wishes, you wouldn't have been placed in that situation, so for that I'm sorry. His eyes softened, but only for a second. His sympathy toward Mama was a different story. But you, on the other hand, if you're so bothered by what's going on in the neighborhood, then maybe it's time to move out of the neighborhood. Don't you start, Herschel. Mama threw her fork onto her plate and buried her face into her hands. Don't start, Herschel, nothing. You started this mess, so let's finish it, Daddy demanded. If the neighborhood makes you so sick, it's time to revisit the idea of moving to Woodland Hills. What good is that going to do us? If you think the Koreans are giving us a run for our money, you ain't seen nothing yet until those white folks run us off, Mama fired back. They'd run us out of that place so fast and make our heads swim, because that's what they do to any black family that has the nerve to do it. It's not like we can't afford to live like them. I make good money down at the station, and you bring in a good income yourself from the rents over on Buzzard's Row. It ain't about the money, Herschel. It's about being looked down on all the time by those snotty do-gooders, Mama hissed. Every chance they get, they assume you lost, because as long as they could remember, black folk was only spotted there before dusk. Mama was passionate in how she felt about Woodland Hills, and she had every right to be. Woodland Hills was once one of those 3 sundown towns that displayed signs that read, "Ain't no niggers allowed after dark." Though the ordinance had long since been banished, Mama swore that she wouldn't live in a town that purposely kept out not just black people, but Chinese Americans, Jews, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, and any other culture that wasn't all white in skin color. Mama enjoyed shopping in Woodland Hills because the quality of the groceries was better. Hey, Simply Debbie Sue, you're catching us reading. We're about to finish this chapter, and then we're going to talk about power. Who has it, how you get it, and what do you do if you don't have it? Most of the residents in Woodland Hills were firefighters, policemen, and teachers. Daddy always felt like our family had earned our stripes to live among them, but Mama begged to differ. In fact, she found herself reminding him that Woodland Hills wouldn't even ever be the place for us to live because of what that town once stood for. She didn't think it had really changed that much at its heart. If you want to live there, you go right on ahead, Herschel, but I won't be going with you. Only the lower class lives in Buzzardville, Daddy argued. Well, consider me lower class, too, because I'm staying right with them, Mama snapped back. If we move up to Woodland Hills, I bet all the money in my pocket that you won't have to deal with backyard niggers getting shot dead before your eyes, an insensitive Daddy said. Just because you work with them don't make you one of them, Mama smiled darkly. Like me, Mama was also offended by him calling his own people such nasty names. How could you fix your lips to go against your own people? What happened to the man that I married all those years ago? Just 'cause we share the same skin color don't make them my people. Daddy cocked his head arrogantly. To answer your question, I'm the same man you married. I'm just wise enough now to know black folk can't be trusted. Irritation picked me the more I listened to Daddy talk like that. Just 'cause you have a position on the force with a group of white men don't make them your people neither. Mama's outburst matched the way I felt internally. That kind of talk is the exact reason why black folks don't get ahead, Daddy snapped. I could count on my hands and toes how many times I had to sit and listen to that same argument. Daddy being whitewashed and Mama advocating that black lives were important. I was saved by the bell when the phone rang. Annoyed, Daddy walked over to the kitchen counter, snatched the receiver from the cradle, and barked into the speaker, "Henchman residence." After a moment, he looked at Mama and said, "It's for you." Instead of handing Mama the phone, he set the receiver on the counter. Mama reached over, picked up the receiver, and pressed it to her ear. She didn't say much, just, "Okay," and "I don't think so," and "Everything will be just fine." She mostly listened and then told the caller to give her a second and she would be there in a minute. Hearing her say that made Daddy cut his eyes at her again. "You ain't going nowhere," Daddy shouted so loudly that he startled me. "You don't have to jump every time he calls." "Herschel, stop it!" Mama matched the pitch of his voice. Focusing back on her phone calls, she repeated in the receiver, "Just give me a second and I'll be there." She hung up and returned to her seat. "Why do you have to run every time he calls? He has a family. Let them tend to him." Daddy studied her reaction through narrowed eyes. "You know exactly why," Mama shouted as she slammed her fork against the plate. She stepped so fast that the chair fell backward and landed with a loud thud. She gave the chair one last kick before she stormed out the kitchen and to the front door. Daddy stared after her as she walked out. Just like that, she was gone. And I was left at the table feeling awkward. The argument was over old man Wilson, the neighborhood drunk who often roamed the neighborhood mumbling to himself. When my grandfather chose to migrate to Buzzardville from Mississippi, he decided he wanted a piece of the American dream. In addition to our home, he purchased a strip of row houses up the street from our home. He affectionately named it Buzzard's Row because the circle of homes reminded him of a small village filled with folks buzzing about any and everything while they sat out on their front stoops. When my grandfather passed on to glory, my mother inherited Buzzard's Row and took over renting out the homes. Old man Wilson just happened to be one of those tenants. Although he had family in the neighborhood that could care for him, they didn't. They wrote him off after he went crazy over a woman who they didn't want him to be with to begin with. He lost his good job as an equipment operator at a landfill along with his mind and dignity. That was all it took for his family to say enough was enough and sever ties with him for good. Mama always said it was a shame that his own kinfolk walked right past him as if they didn't even know him. Ever since I could remember, Mama had helped old man Wilson. I thought she helped him because she felt sorry for him. Mama understood his situation, but Daddy couldn't care less. Mama tended his front yard, house kept for him, did his grocery shopping, and sometimes even made meals for him. Mama wasn't the only person that helped him out either. Our next-door neighbor, Gussie May, helped Mama to clean for him when she could, and his next-door neighbors, Miss Melba and Miss Perline, often looked out for him by making sure he kept up with his medication and made it in safely at night after walking the streets barefoot all day. Even the men in the neighborhood helped him by making sure his trash was set out on the curb every Tuesday for pickup. Everyone in the neighborhood helped old man Wilson, with the exception of Daddy. I overheard him telling Mama that he thought it was disgusting that everyone catered to him as if he was a child that always needed caring for. The first time I witnessed Mama and Daddy argue about old man Wilson, I was a small child myself. It was during my 5th birthday party. Apparently it was the first time anyone witnessed him roaming through the neighborhood barefoot. One of the neighbors called Mama on the phone and asked if she could head to his house to check on him. Daddy wasn't happy about her leaving my party to tend to old man Wilson, but before she could get her hand on the doorknob, old man Wilson was outside our front window, drunk and yelling slurs. Mama went outside and tried to calm him down while Daddy stood on our front stoop. "If you don't take your black behind back to your own house with this mess," Daddy said, "I'm gonna come down there and put a bruising on you myself." "Go to hell, Herschel henchman," old man Wilson shot back. "Burn in hell while you at it." Daddy went into the house and called up one of his friends down at the station. Within a couple minutes, a cruiser pulled up and 2 female officers jumped out with their cuffs and guns in hand. Mama went into damage control mode and tried to defuse the situation. She walked over and greeted the officers, talking to them for a couple of minutes. The officers placed their guns back into their holsters and put their handcuffs away. One of them walked over, patted old man Wilson on the back, and guided him to the squad car. He started to walk away peacefully, then yanked away from the officer and grabbed his crotch. I know you want some of this, he blurted out. I was too young to determine if he was directing that statement toward Mama, one of the officers, or both. One officer again attempted to guide him toward the car, only this time she secured his arm. Mama stood there with her arms folded as she watched the officer buckle him into the back seat, while Daddy screamed for Mama to come back to the party. I hope you happy. You ruined my daughter's birthday party. Daddy's anger mounted as he shouted at old man Wilson, now in the squad car. Mama spun around and delivered a sharp look Daddy's way. That was the first time I saw her give him that look. The look that told him that if he kept it up, he'd have to deal with the consequences later. Of course, Mama defying Daddy in front of the whole neighborhood sparked an argument in our house that night. I hope you happy, Odessa. I could hear Daddy through my bedroom walls. You gave our whole neighborhood and my coworkers something to talk about today. Herschel, what else was I supposed to do? You were supposed to allow the police to figure it out, Daddy said, getting louder. We can't turn our back on him. He's not our responsibility to care about. How can you say that? Mama's voice cracked. Like I just did, Daddy snapped. That night wasn't the last argument Mama and Daddy had about old man Wilson. The more they argued about Mama's involvement with him, the more I hated him, because it was always a topic of discussion at our house. Though I hated it, I understood why Mama fought with Daddy so much about it. Just like me, Mama wanted to be heard. As women, we needed our opinions to matter. We wanted to have a seat at the table like everybody else. I'm talking about the seats often reserved for those seen as having influence and power needed to make decisions that could affect change in the world. A seat at the table that would give us a fighting chance to be heard and to make a difference. The seats that were occupied by men, both white and black, who denied access to women despite all that had been sacrificed. Black men feared that if we became their equal, we would lose respect for them. White men feared that if we ever came to power, we would realize we didn't need to be offered a seat at the table to begin with because we built the house. Instead, women like Mama and myself were reminded often that there was no need to desire a seat at the table because there was no place for us. In fact, now that I think about it, there were other things that I hated more than going to Harlan's. Being denied a fighting chance to be heard, given an equal opportunity to make a difference, and old man Wilson. Like I said, who does? Me? That is kind of creepy if it's talking about me. So that is the chapter, the first chapter of The Price We Pay. I'll show you the book once again, by Nikki T. Anthony. And it's that last paragraph in particular that caused me to want to talk about power. Because it's an interesting thing to notice that the author, or the main character rather, doesn't believe she has any power. And one of the things that I believe is that the fastest way to strip people of power is to convince them that they don't have any. What do y'all think? Did you enjoy the chapter? Did it make you mad? If it did, it's fine. I mean, the first time I read through, I didn't like it, but that's also why I read the whole book. Because I find that often if there's something in there that's unsettling to me or that I don't like in a story, it's a chance to see the world from somebody else's perspective and figure out what it is about that book that is irritating and annoying me. What it is that's really sticking in my craw. And part of it is that assumption that they have no power. That the women in the story have no power. But as we can clearly see, Herschel's changing his behavior based on what Odessa's doing. They're not powerless. They have a voice. In fact, their voice matters so much. He's softening his tone. He's adjusting his behavior. But that doesn't change how the main character sees it, because she's so convinced she doesn't have power and that she doesn't have influence. She's not recognizing the impact of her power or her influence. And I think that's something in our world today that is common. That people assume that they don't have power. That they have to leverage power or fight for power or that they can't make a difference. I mean, that's, she talks about people with real power, power to make an influence, power to make a difference. We all have power to make a difference. We all have influence. I don't have to make big moves to make a big difference in the world. All I have to do is change somebody else's life for the better. And so part of the, it's an interesting thing when you take a look at that chapter and then you start asking important questions, which is what I did when I created a workbook to go with that. Because what you're seeing in that first chapter is what I call bias in action. Our brains operate on a belief-based operating system. Basically, we run on a set of beliefs, ideas, assumptions, and stories that our world is filtered through those things, and how we see the world is filtered through it. It's actually, you're not to be blamed for not being familiar with the story. It's a story that was published in 2022 and was put out for young adults, and it's got several awards to it. Correction, 2023 copyright. And it's very much a story set in a fictional city of Buzzardville, Alabama. And I'll read you the back of the book. So it's Zanetta Hinchman awakens to the racial injustices rooted in her small town when she witnesses a black neighbor's fatal shooting. The lack of justice delivered by the police, along with the lack of attention the shooting receives from those in authority in her community, outrages her and causes her to question the need to respect an authority that can't protect her. The price of her silence. When Zanetta and her best friend find themselves on the receiving end of racially motivated police brutality, they're given a choice: keep their mouths shut or let their families pay the price. Her silence buys her family's safety, but when someone dies because of it, Zanetta's confronted with a terrible truth. There's a price to be paid for silence, too. A false accusation. Now the same cops that demanded Zanetta's silence falsely accuse her father of a crime she knows he didn't commit. Will justice prevail, or will her father be wrongly convicted by the system he swore his life to serve? Yeah, exactly. You are, indeed. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I engaged with this story so deeply when I first read it. And I got to read the pre-edited version of this book. I was in a group of people who were mixed racial, and we were mixed race, ethnicities, mixed income levels, mixed life experiences. So it was a very diverse group. And we started talking about the experiences in the book and how we saw things. There were males and females too. And it allowed us to have an open discussion about topics that are typically very difficult to talk about, like sexism and racism and the contrast in experiences between rich and poor, without getting so emotionally involved, because it was all about the characters and their experiences. So we were having a common experience via the characters that allowed us to discuss it from an objective perspective. And having that conversation was so freeing and so liberating, and really shifted. Each of us got to see something different. So that was when I saw how it had the potential to really help people engage in discussions about power dynamics and racism and sexism and topics that are typically very sensitive and very hard to talk about in an open way without having everybody's feelings get hurt. Because we can each say, okay, well, this has been my experience, or I find this particularly hard to believe because this doesn't match with my experience. It was so funny. I was talking about the shooting and how I found it initially so unrealistic. And one girl looked up at me and goes, because to me, it's like, okay, she's traumatized. They go home, they eat dinner like it's nothing. How does that even work? And one of the girls in my group was like, that was just another Tuesday in my neighborhood. People were being shot all the time, practically on your front door. And you're eating dinner like it ain't a big deal because you're so consistently traumatized that at some point in time, your brain just sort of goes, well, that's how it is. And so it does become just another Tuesday for you. And I was like, wow, I can't even imagine growing up in an environment where that is so common and so normalized that you just have a dinner, no big deal, even if you're having a fight about it. And so, yeah, it was a really powerful experience to be able to have those conversations and to be able to come together as a group and have those breakthroughs, really, because that is part of the problem, I think, in our country, is that certain groups have gotten the idea that they have no power. Like, how many times have I seen women say they need to be empowered? Sister, you don't need to be empowered. You need to discover the power you do have and how you leverage it appropriately. Because women have always had power. Even if they didn't think they did, they do. Helen of Troy, I guarantee you that it wasn't the face that launched 1,000 ships, it was that heart of hers that led men to go to war to recover her. Women are amazing, and the influence we have on men is incredible. And on children, we are the first person to influence a child's life. If that's not power, I don't know what is. When you lived in Massachusetts and had family members come to visit from northern Vermont, they didn't like the neighborhood that we lived in because of the amount of violence. Yeah, I mean, that's normal. People don't want to live in a violent area. But when you don't live in a violent area, it makes it very hard for you to understand why people who do live in those areas behave the way they do. And so reading a book like The Price We Pay can sort of help you understand that mindset and start to broaden your horizons a little bit and see the world through somebody else's eyes. And you may not like what you're seeing, but at least you're getting a chance to understand it. And when it's in fiction, it's a little easier to absorb because, you know, it's through a character. And so you can put that kind of that emotional distance. And at least 3 shootings a night. Wow. That's rough. That's really rough. The closest we've come to that is we lived in an area of Garland that had frequent flyer miles for being on cops. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. We were never on cops, but that particular area of Garland and Dallas was known for drug busts and all kinds of problems because it was an extremely poverty-stricken area. And a lot of times people in poverty don't cope well. Yeah. The lack of violence in northern Vermont is why you moved up there. I can imagine. Massachusetts, when you lived in Massachusetts, I'm guessing you were around the Boston area, is that right? Because Boston does have a lot of violence in that area around it. And it's unfortunate. But yeah. And I think that we often forget that we as individuals have power. In fact, a lot of times I think we're encouraged to believe that our power exists solely in our ability to elect officials, exists solely in our ability to choose where to spend our money, And, so a lot of people feel like they're classed out of the ability to participate in the system. Like Zanetta was saying, she wanted a seat at the table where decisions were made. Well, decisions aren't made in the boardroom. Let me tell you, one of the things I learned is a very interesting dynamic when I lived in a small town. A lot of people will focus on the city council and the mayor's office and all that, and they think that that is where power resides in a small town. But if you actually study the power dynamics, there is inevitably a diner in any small town where the business owners gather together to discuss issues relating to the city in the mornings over coffee. And that is where a lot of not only business deals are made, but decisions about what should be done in the city are also made. And then those people go back and influence the mayor and the city council to see things their way. So power isn't necessarily held by the people you elected. Quite often it's in the hands of property owners and business owners and other people that you don't even see behind the scenes. But really, the true power of any place is in its people, and I think it's important to remember that. I think that it's important that every person understand you have power, tremendous power, to make a difference right where you are. Whether you're in a small town, a small neighborhood, a big city, it doesn't matter. You have power, and you have a voice that you can make heard, and that has never been more true than in the age of the internet. Never. I mean, I can reach 1,100 people with a single short. Just one. That's all I need. And that may not seem like a lot of people. But if I change even, let's say 10%, 110 people 110 people have their lives impacted by one thing that I've said, those 110 people change how they behave. And they change how they behave toward every person in their life. So every person connected with them has indirectly been impacted by what I've said. I've had tremendous influence just by being me, just by saying the things that I think are true. I don't have to be elected. I don't have to be nominated. I don't have to have a title or a degree. I don't have to be a big name. People around the world don't have to know who I am. Those are all myths. I don't have to be a politician to have power. I don't have to be somebody with millions of dollars to have power. I don't have to be somebody with billions of dollars to have power. I have power just the way I am, and so do you. You've spoken in front of the city council during the COVID-19 pandemic because you're being harassed by the police? Because the neighbor's calling them? Yeah. Sometimes you got to. Sometimes you need to go in front of the city council. And sometimes it's helpful if you know where to find that group of people that are actually running the things rather than the people that they elected to stand in their place. So you always get something out of hanging with you during your live streams. Well, thank you, Malachi. I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I think we underestimate, and I don't think this is accidental. I think we've been led to believe that our power is held by politicians, corporations, and bankers. And that if we want change, our best hope is to vote for it or wait for a corporation to decide to make changes or hope that the bankers will have, be more empathetic toward us. And when you believe that and you operate according to that, you don't do anything to fix your own situation because you're busy waiting on everybody else to fix it for you. It creates a sort of learned helplessness that prevents you from doing the real work to solve problems right where you are. You are built to solve problems. Your brain is a problem-solving machine that operates better than any supercomputer out there. Even AI, it beats the pants off AI. You just have to put what you've got to use. Start caring about each other. Start stepping up to serve one another. Look for opportunities in your community. Look, let me tell you a secret. If you live in a community with 99 problems, opportunity is not one of them. You have opportunity to make a difference anywhere there's a problem in your community. Speaking to the city council is exactly what stopped the police from being dispatched to our house, especially if it's when you're playing the drums and guitars. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's something that's true. You know, go to City Hall if you need to. Don't be afraid to speak to the city council. Don't be afraid to speak to your politicians. Don't be afraid to speak up. And certainly leverage those avenues that have been given to you. Vote. Even if you don't agree with the people on the ballot, write in a candidate. I have written in Jesus Christ on the ballot because I felt that that was the only person qualified to run the country. I didn't agree with either of the candidates they presented, and I refused to vote for either of them because in a way it gives credence to the system that they've given us. I listened to some voices of influence last vote and didn't vote in Jesus Christ as a write-in candidate, and I regret that choice. I should have stuck to my guns. And I'm seeing the reasons to regret that choice played out currently. But it's seriously, they're trying to replace us with AI generated stuff to take our jobs and teach our children. I think it actually goes a little deeper than that. I think they want AI to replace all of us eventually, because I think that there is a class. The evidence that I've seen suggests that there is a class of billionaires whose goal is to wipe out the rest of humanity, and they think they'll be able to live with AI and tap into all of the intellectual property that we have without us being there to feed the machine. So, you know, they're gonna end up building their own hellscape, but, you know. Hey, Rob! Yes, the good news is continuing to roll in, just so you know. I did get an update on my job. It was originally supposed to start Monday. They have not gotten small town problems, right? My work computer has not been shipped in yet, and they're not sure when to expect it. So they pushed my start date to April 6th, but that's actually okay because that gives me a chance to spend that week working on some projects that I needed to finish up and also looking for a place to live. So. Oh, AI is going to get us a lot of trouble. Oh, gracious. Hopefully I'm back. Let's see. Let me go into everything and hopefully get my chat back and my good grief. Our AI overlords didn't appear to appreciate what I was saying, so they shut me down. Well, that's the story, and I'm sticking to it, right? Oh my goodness. Craziness. Yeah. Woohoo! I'm back! Yay! I know, right? The Mafia does some serious work. Let's see. Oh boy. That was fun. Yeah, get to talking about serious topics and watch what happens, huh? My chat was so hot it was blowing up my computer apparently. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's causing it to do that. I'm gonna have to do some investigation and figure out what the problem is with my computer. My poor baby. She's 6 years old. Forgive her. For a computer, that's like being 600. Oh, but yeah, so I mean that's the thing is it's gonna be a complete rock and roll chug machine once you get done with it. Nice. Hope the kitty recovers. Tyson is a great name. Who's got Tyson? Let's see. Yeah. Play the guitar. That's just taking care of your sick kitty, Tyson. What's wrong with Tyson? Get to start tearing down the Fesley Super Strat guitar. Nice. So yeah, but the start date for my new position has been delayed until the 6th, which is fine. Like I said, it gives me kind of a week of ramp up period, time to finish some of the projects that I've been working on that I need to get done that I haven't had a chance to do between the move, between a lot of different things going on in my life. So, not everything has come through financially that I was hoping would come through, but we're still not at the end of the month. That still could happen. Of course, it's got basically one day to. No, I guess 3 days. Really, because it's Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. So it's still possible. And we've got more than enough to get up there. We've got a week of hotel taken care of, so we'll have a place to sleep. We've got enough to, if we had to, we could extend that week for a week until Randy gets his first paycheck, basically. It's not preference, but it could happen. So, he needs his mouth shut. He had an abscess that exploded. Ooh, an infection on his left paw. Yikes. Poor baby. He sounds miserable. Yeah, and I definitely hope you get to feeling better. Hey, Debbie, how is your husband doing? I know he had surgery, right? Like a couple weeks ago? How's he doing? Been adding you guys to my prayer list, so hoping everything's checked out and all okay. I know the two of you have been taking turns being sick. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that I did want to talk about tonight was power, because I think there's this misconception that some people have power, other people don't. That men automatically have power and women don't, which is actually kind of really ridiculous if you want to think about it. He's starting to do really well. That's good. I'm so glad. I'm really glad, because that's rough when the two of you are taking turns being ill, and then all you've got is each other to take care of you. It's so difficult. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Rob actually is solid in that direction. Good guy to have in your corner if you need prayers. Oh, yeah. You've been trying to take care of it on your own, but it's beyond your skills of healing. Yeah, that's tough. I hate it when your animals get sick or your kids get sick, because there's really not a lot that you can do to just comfort them. And it hurts because you'd like to fix it for them, but you can't. And they're so, especially when it's a favorite pet or a beloved child, and you're just, you know. But yeah. So that's why the topic of power came up, was I was reading through that book again, and thinking about how many people in society today, the whole problem with the DEI movement, and I think the reason it got so much backlash, it's not that people disagree that diversity is healthy. Diversity of thoughts and opinions and beliefs is a healthy thing. It's not that we don't believe that people need to be treated equally. That they all should be given equal dignity, or that they should be included. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem was how it was approached. and it was approached in such a way that it created divisions rather than healed them. It blamed, basically told certain people that they had no power. In fact, one of the people that was talking about it was black people can't be racist because they don't have power in society. And I'm like, wow, how, how, what a way to rob people of dignity. What a way to rob people of their hope that they can make a difference. By convincing them that they have no power, you have effectively handicapped them and prevented them from looking for things that they could do to take action. One of the most dangerous games that you can play is the blame game, and that's because it removes you from the equation of what can be done to solve a problem. I used to have a problem with blame a lot. In fact, early in my marriage, I blamed my husband for our financial problems because I was marginally better at managing finances than he was. And then I decided to put that theory to the test. And so I got a bank account that was solely in my name, and I had my entire paycheck deposited to that bank account because I wasn't going to let him ruin things for us anymore. And it took me all of 3 weeks, 3 weeks, y'all, to tangle that account up so bad that there was nothing I could do except close it and pay off the debt. And that was the day that forced me to realize that I had been so busy blaming my husband for all of our financial problems that I hadn't been tending my own corner of our marriage and making sure that I was not a contributing factor to our financial problems. But see, I couldn't solve the financial problem until I acknowledged that I was part of it. This is a mathematical fact that Y, which is you, must be part of the equation in order for you to be able to solve that problem. So if the equation is x plus y equals z and you pull y out of that equation, y cannot solve it because all you've got are x and z. So if you want to solve a problem, you have to make sure that you're part of the problem, that you see where you're playing a role in it. And maybe you didn't start that problem. Maybe you inherited that problem. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you inherited it or if you caused it. You still have the ability to do something to solve it, as long as you're part of the equation. So, you know, and I think that that ability to be part of the solution for any problem is what gives us our power. That we don't have to. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Malachi. Post it. Post the GoFundMe. Yeah. Anybody who wants to help with funding the care for the kitty, you know, please, if you can, help. It's always. We've all got issues that we're raising money for, so it's kind of one of those challenges. But yeah, absolutely. If I can include, you know, I can't help you any other way, but I can do that, I'm more than willing. Yeah. So, but at any rate, and I feel like it's an important time in society for us to be talking about these power dynamics, because I think sometimes that is what causes a lot of the friction between people, is the tendency to blame everybody else for where the problems are, the tendency to sell yourself short and see yourself as helpless and powerless to solve a problem, and to not know what to do. And, you know, that is, if I can correct that one thing, if I can help people figure out that one thing, that you are powerful, Your skin color has nothing to do with your power. Your bank account has nothing to do with your power to make a difference. None of that impacts it. No matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what gender you are powerful. All the power you need to make a difference and to have your voice heard lives in you. All you have to do is step up and look for opportunities to serve other people, look for opportunities to be part of the solution, and you will find the power that you need to make a difference, to make yourself heard. There's one thing, it was an interesting thing when in 2018, I went to this conference in Los Angeles. You know, it's about 500 people in the room, and I am surrounded by people who made way more money than I did, and had way more status than I did, and had way more of an audience built than I did. And nobody in that room knew who I was when I stepped in the doors. Why would they? I was just some nobody from Texas. But I'll tell you this, by the end of the 4 days that we were together in that conference, people were coming up to ask me for my business cards. They were coming up to seek my counsel. They wanted to take me to lunch and pick my brain. And one of them invited me on a nationally syndicated podcast and told me I was relentlessly positive, and he wanted people to meet me because of that. And all I did that entire 4 days was focus on using my gifts, my talents, and my skills on helping the other people in that room achieve what they desired. When you do that, nobody cares what's in your bank account if you can help them with what they need. Nobody cares what titles or degrees you got if what you suggest that they do actually works and produces results. Nobody cares how well you're dressed if you can help them get what they need done. All of that stuff isn't true. Status doesn't make you more valuable. You get status from service. People think they can buy their way into status, and it's not that way at all. You can't buy status, and you can't buy people's respect. What you can buy is an illusion that you have status and that you have respect. That's what you're paying $400 for when you buy a pair of Nike shoes. Or $1,000 for when you buy a Coach purse or a Prada purse. You're buying a symbol of status and respect. But you're not getting it. Because real status and real respect is earned, not purchased, at a store near you. And these are the thoughts and opinions of Brandy M. Miller with Creating with Love. Want to hear more real takes? Visit Real Talk. But yeah, I mean, I think that we need to examine what power is and how it's earned. No. Am I not broadcast? I'm frozen. We're just having all kinds of fun tonight.
It's internet.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, chat. Ooh, Lordy, have mercy. You guys, I so appreciate your patience and sticking around for that. Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, one of the conferences I went to, you know, it was a speaking competition. Oh, good. I'm glad you can see me. I'm glad you can hear me. So I went to the speaking competition, and I didn't place. I didn't even place. And one of the guys comes up to me at the end of the conference, and he's like, I was so shocked that you didn't place. He said, I'll have to admit that when I first saw you, I thought, oh, this girl is going to have a long way to go before she'll ever be ready to speak on a stage. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, you just revealed to me how shallow you are, buddy. you you sussed all of that out just by taking one look at me, huh? He said, and then you opened your mouth, and I was like, wow, where did she come from? And then one of the girls was taking me back home from a business conference, and she and I had attended, and she's like, you are a surprise in a lot of ways. I'm like, you really? She's like, yeah, I mean, you don't look like much, but then you open your mouth, and I'm like, well, thanks. Yeah. She's like, you like to let people underestimate you, don't you? Exactly, exactly, Rob. I'm like, yeah, actually, I do. It is part of my strategy that I don't worry about, I don't fuss with my image too much. It's not that I'm not going to present myself clean, or that I'm not going to take a shower, or that I'm not going to put on clean clothes, right? I know how to present myself in public acceptable. But I'm also not going to show up in a $500 suit. And there is a reason for that. When you show up in a $500 suit, what people are judging is your $500 suit, not you. When I show up in my clothes, which are respectable and clean and presentable, but not top of the line, I know that whatever they say to me is what they're really thinking. They will feel comfortable saying exactly what's on their mind. And I learn a lot about them because they do. So I'm not afraid of people underestimating me. My grandpa was really funny about that. You would never have known that he was a millionaire. He walked around in grease-stained coveralls constantly. He had been an airplane mechanic in World War II. And he owned his own airfield when he was older. After World War II, he bought one and ran it and trained pilots and got paid to do that work until his wife that he married decided that she didn't like the fact that her husband had a blue-collar job and insisted that he upgrade his lifestyle. And so he sold his airfield and became a teacher in a high school. And so he was not only living off the money from his sale, but he had a teacher's pension and a railroad's pension and all this money coming in. And he never, ever let on that he was a millionaire, ever. But he did try to tell me some things about how they operate. And I was young and naive and had no clue what he was doing. He took me on a tour around neighborhoods in Dallas, and he said, I want you to pick out where you think the millionaires live. And so, of course, I'm picking out the places with the big fancy houses and the multiple cars in the driveway that are behind those beautiful hedges and manicured lawns. And he's like, no, sweetheart, those are not where the millionaires live. Those are where the people who are millions of dollars in debt live. Then he took me by the houses that were small, 2-3 bedrooms at most, older homes with older cars in the driveway, well maintained, but not spectacular looking, nothing fancy. And he said, this is where the millionaires live. They don't spend their money on flash. They're not interested in impressing you. They buy to last because they don't want to keep investing their money in everything. They don't buy for show. They buy for substance and durability so that they don't have to keep buying over and over and over again. And at the time, I really didn't believe him because I didn't know where his authority came from. I didn't know how he knew that, so I wasn't confident that he was telling me the truth. Because I had the ideas from Hollywood about what millionaires were and how they lived, which was a complete wrong picture. But he was right. The more that I've aged, the more that I've grown up, the more that I recognize just how right he was. Real millionaires don't usually waste their money on flash and show. They don't need to. And that's how real power operates too. It's not loud. It's not noisy. It's quiet. It's perfectly fine with you overlooking it. It's perfectly fine with operating behind the scenes. There's this point in my life where, yeah, and they surround themselves with people of substance, with friendship of durability. Exactly. There was a point in my life where I was so concerned about being visible, being seen. I wanted everybody to know who I was. I wanted to be famous. And God put this dream in my heart, in my head, you know, where there was a single spark that lit the whole place on fire. And he pointed out to me, it doesn't take much. You only need one spark to set an entire forest on fire. And the same thing is true about humanity. You only need one spark to set the entire place, to set the whole world on fire. You don't need to be in front. The real person with the real power isn't the person on the stage. It's not the person in the limelight. The person in the limelight is taking directions from the person with real power. And that's the person behind the scenes. So if you want real power, stop focusing on being on the stage and start stepping behind the scenes. And you'll figure out where the real power is and how you can be part of that. But I've also learned something else. That people who go seeking power in life are the exact people you don't want having it. Because they miss the point. Power, like real status and real power, come from service to others. It is an offshoot. It is a brand. It's basically what happens when you serve others is that you gain status because people start looking to you. And you gain power because people start listening to you and being influenced by you. If you want real power, focus on the service. You don't need everything else. If you want real status, focus on the service. You will gain it as an offshoot. But we're not being taught many times the right things, and we're listening, quite frankly, to a lot of times to Hollywood and TV shows and getting the wrong ideas from there. So I thought I'd set the record straight. Thanks, guys. You have survived my technical difficulty stage. Woohoo! Now, if you happen to be interested in securing your own copy of The Price We Pay, I'm going to show you how to get there. I'm going to show you how to buy it because let me try to remember what I'm looking for. I'm going to give you the link in the chat, which will take you to it. You can buy either the ebook copy or the actual book itself. Yeah. And we do have a program that goes with it. It's pretty cool. There you go. And like I said, it's a good book. The hardbound book is $29.95, including shipping and handling. The ebook is $11.99. And the study guide, if you want the study guide that goes with it, there's an additional $20 that you'll need to pay. So thank you guys for attending the stream. I didn't really intend to necessarily shill the book and the study guide, but if you do want to purchase it, it wouldn't hurt my feelings any. It's not my book. The money does go to the publishing company that produced it. But it's definitely a book worth ordering, book worth checking out. If you don't have any money and you still want to get a hold of it, you can always go to your local library and request that they stock a copy for you. That's another way to get a copy. If you ever have a book that you're interested in buying, but you don't have the money to do so, you can go to your local library and request that they stock the library. They stock the book at the library. And if they get enough requests, they usually will buy a copy. And all you need to do is give them the ISBN, which I popped in the chat. The ISBN is how they look up the book and find it. But yeah, it's definitely been great hanging out with you guys. I appreciate you being here with me. I appreciate you being patient through my technical difficulties. And the next time that I broadcast Real Talk, it should be from Morris, Minnesota. So thanks for joining me in West Des Moines.